become our spiritual guides, but you might have a closer connection with a specific Imam. And for me personally, it always has been Al-Imam Musa ibn Ja'far. And the reason why I have always felt a close connection to Imam Al-Kadhim, it's because when I was younger, I discovered that I would not have been born if it wasn't for the shafa'ah and the tawassul of Imam Al-Kadhim. I'll share with you a story about something that happened to my maternal grandfather. My grandfather was born in 1933. He was born in Baghdad. And he lived a few miles away from the shrine of Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. He was the youngest in the family, and his name was Kadhim. He was named after the seventh Imam. When he was in elementary school, he became very ill. His mother, my great-grandparents, his parents thought that it was just a flu or a common cold, so they didn't think much of it. They gave him some medicine. One day went by, 2 days went by, and he wasn't getting better. His health was not improving. He missed an entire week of school. They took him to a local clinic. The doctor wasn't able to diagnose him. They went to one hospital after another. His health wasn't improving. Months went by, and he became so sick that he couldn't even get out of bed. He was losing weight, vomiting, feverish, until one night they rushed him to the hospital, and the doctors said that we don't know what's wrong with your son, but what we do know is that it doesn't look like he's going to survive. Whatever this is, his time is limited. Now you can imagine that when you're a mother and this is your youngest child, that's the last thing that you want to hear from a doctor, that we don't have a solution. We don't know what the child is suffering from. So my grandfather's mother, so my great-grandmother, she loses all hope. She is literally told that your youngest son is going to die at the age of 8 of an illness that we don't even know. So what does she do? She leaves her house barefoot in a state of absolute desperation. And she walks barefoot to the shrine of Imam Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim. She goes to the shrine of the Imam. She reaches the Darih, and then she starts to cry. She says to the Imam that, Ya ibn Rasulullah, my son is going to die. I've taken him to every doctor that I know, every hospital, every clinic. So I ask you, Ya ibn Rasulullah, to give shifa to my son. I named him after you, and you are Bab al-Hawa'ij, and I have come to you barefoot, begging you to do tawassul with Allah Azza wa Jal and give my son healing. So she returns home. That night, she has a dream. And I heard this story growing up from many members of my family. That night she has a dream. In the dream she's sitting at home and someone knocks on the door. She goes to the door, she opens it. She says, I saw a man wearing a black turban. She said there was so much light in his face that I was going to address him as Yabna Rasulullah, but before I could speak, the Sayyid said to me that Al-Imam Musa ibn Ja'far has sent me to you. She says, my son is ill. I was told that he's going to die. In the dream, this Sayyid who was sent by Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam, he says to her that Al-Imam Musa ibn Ja'far says to you, take your son to St. Mary Hospital. There is a doctor who is there who can cure him. She wakes up from this dream, and she's never heard of a hospital called St. Mary Hospital in Baghdad. So she wakes up and she asks around, have you guys heard of a hospital named St. Mary Hospital? She asks neighbors, friends. No one has heard of this hospital. Until she discovers that this is a small little private hospital in the outskirts of Baghdad. So she discovers that this is an actual hospital. She takes my grandfather to the hospital, and on that day, it's happened that there was a German physician visiting that clinic. The moment that physician saw my grandfather, he said, I think I know what it is. And they discovered that there was fluid buildup in his spine, and they removed the fluid, and he survived. So all my life, I grew up hearing that your mother, all of you, were born because of the tawassul of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim salawatullahi alayhi. What makes Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam so unique? Why is this man so beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal? That people come to him from all around the world, and people have many stories. My grandfather wasn't the only one to receive shifa from Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. There are many, hundreds and thousands of stories similar to this. Why is this Imam so beloved? Why is he so dear to Allah Azza wa Jal? You know, brothers and sisters, when you look at the life of this Imam, the Imam alayhi salam exhibited patience like you and I cannot even comprehend. You know, we always say that there is no day like the day of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. But I would say that there are no years like the years of Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim. That no Imam suffered more in one day than Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. But perhaps no Imam suffered year after year more than Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi salam. If Nabi Ayyub alayhi salam is the symbol of patience among the prophets of God, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam is the symbol of patience among the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. When Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam was martyred, you know, brothers and sisters, Imam al-Sadiq was martyred by Al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi. He was a ruthless Abbasid Khalifa. And when he saw that Imam al-Sadiq's popularity was spreading and he was having so much influence, he issued an order for Imam al-Sadiq to be killed as well as his successor. Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam knew that the seventh Imam would be in danger. So in his wasiyyah, the Imam alayhi salam writes that his wasi is actually 5 people to confuse the Abbasids, so they would not know who is the actual successor. In his wasiyah, he writes that my wasiyah is there are 5 people. One of them was Mansur, he wrote. He wrote Hamida, his wife. He wrote Abdullah, one of his sons. He writes the name of Musa al-Kadhim among them. So the Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam knew that the freedom that he enjoyed during his life, the ability that he had to teach people from the mimbar of the Prophet, that luxury would not be afforded to his son, to the 7th Imam. And therefore you find that immediately after the martyrdom of Imam al-Sadiq, it wasn't clear to the Shias who the 7th Imam was. You know, brothers and sisters, we take it for granted that we can easily list the 12 Imams. To us, 14 centuries later, it's clear who the 12 Imams are. But when Imam al-Sadiq is martyred in Medina, Imam al-Sadiq didn't announce publicly who the 7th Imam was. Because if he did, he would be putting a bullseye on the 7th Imam and he would have been immediately killed by the Khulafa. So the Imam ﷺ only disclosed this information to special people. So many of the close companions of Imam al-Sadiq were confused. They didn't know who is the 7th Imam. They knew that there are 12 Imams. But after the death of Imam al-Sadiq, they don't know who the 7th is. So in this environment, in this climate of confusion, one of the sons of Imam al-Sadiq claims the imamah for himself. Abdullah al-Aftah. You know, brothers and sisters, sometimes we have this impression that the families of prophets and imams are utopian families, that they don't have any problems. When you look at prophets, you take the first family on earth, Adam alayhi salam. Some parents, they're embarrassed that, my daughter doesn't wear hijab, my sister, my son, sometimes he goes to the club. Now, I'm not saying that that's okay, but what I'm saying is that even prophets had problems with their children. Can you imagine if we have a community member, he comes to the center, and he's like, yeah, so my sons got into a fight yesterday, and one of them killed the other, right? Because if you look at the sons of Adam, Qabil kills Habil. You think you have, troubled kids? Adam alayhi salam's sons were killing each other. If you look at Yaqub didn't have a utopian family. His sons tried to kill Yusuf. Some of the children of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt claimed, forget about just not being religious and sometimes missing Salatul Fajr. Some of them claimed to be the representatives of God. They falsely claimed to be the representatives of God on earth. That's not a reflection of the Imams. Just because you have family members or children who are not religious, that doesn't mean that you're not good parents. People have free wills. It's possible that you do your best and your kids or your siblings or your relatives still end up corrupt. So Abdullah al-Aftah claims to be the Imam. Now, Imam al-Sadiq had many students. You have, for example, Hisham ibn Salim and other prominent companions who studied with Imam al-Sadiq, and they know the knowledge that an Imam is supposed to have. Mu'min al-Taq, for example. So Abdullah al-Aftah is claiming to be the 7th Imam. Now, alhamdulillah, the Shi'as, they're not naive. These are students of Imam al-Sadiq. These are fuqaha, they're ulama. So they say, okay, we'll test you. Claimed to be the Imam, so they asked him some fiqhi questions, some specific jurisprudential questions, and he wasn't able to answer. So they quickly, and subhanAllah, the Abbasids didn't interfere with Abdullah al-Aftah. In fact, they had no problem with him promoting himself. So the seniors among the Shia, the ulama, they quickly ruled out Abdullah al-Aftah as an imam. He doesn't even know some of the basic ahkam. So what happens? So they walk out of the house. So they gather in one of the houses in Medina. They test Abdullah al-Aftah. He fails their test. And they walk out of the house crying, because no one knows who the imam is. So they speak amongst each other that, what should we do? We don't know who the seventh imam is. You know why they cry? Because they know what it feels like to have an imam. And when they're living in a period where they don't have access to their ma'soom, it pains them. You and I were living during al-ghaybatul kubra and we're laughing. It's as if there's no problem. We are experiencing the greatest musibah, which is the complete absence of our imam, that we don't have any access to our imam. So Hisham ibn Salim, and this narration is mentioned in Al-Kafi, he says, we walked out of the house after testing Abdullah al-Aftah, and we were confused. We were crying. We were thinking to ourselves that should we become Zaydis, Murjias? Should we follow other sects? Hisham ibn Salim, who's one of the students of Imam al-Sadiq, he says, as we were discussing amongst ourselves in the alleyways, an old man pointed at me and told me to come to him. Hisham ibn Salim, he says that I thought that this man was one of the agents of Bani Abbas, because the Abbasids, they kept a close eye on the Shias. So he said to himself that they're going to take me and they're going to execute me. So he farewells all of his companions and he says that I'd rather be killed rather than seeing you all martyred. So he follows this old man thinking that he's being taken to his death. The old man leads him to the house of Imam Musa al-Kadhim. Now I want you to pay attention to the level of taqiyya at this time. That we think that we're suffering today. We have the freedom of coming together and freely mentioning the names of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, teaching their ahadith. Hisham ibn Salim is secretly led to the house of Imam al-Kadhim. He enters into the house and Imam al-Kadhim is sitting there and he says, don't follow this madhab or that madhab, come to me. Hisham ibn Salim, he says, I was still unsure who the imam was, because Abdullah is the son of Imam al-Sadiq and Musa ibn Ja'far is also a son of the imam. What if he's just like his brother and he's falsely claiming? So he says, I asked Musa ibn Ja'far, are you the imam? Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam, he says, I didn't say that. Pay attention. The imam is in the privacy of his own home. Hisham ibn Salim is asking him, are you the imam? The imam does not feel comfortable in telling him that yes, I'm the imam. That's how much they were being watched. So Hisham ibn Salim, he says, I thought to myself that maybe I should rephrase the question. So he says, I asked Musa ibn Ja'far, do you have an imam? And Musa ibn Ja'far says, no. Hisham ibn Salim says, I understood that he was the imam, and when the imam said to me, I don't have an imam, my heart was overcome by the presence of the ma'soom of my time. Hisham ibn Salim, he says to the imam that, should I inform the Shia of this? Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam says to him, only inform those who can handle the sensitivity of this information. That was what life was like during the time of Imam Al-Kadhim. People literally had to risk their lives just to discover who the seventh Imam was, just to know his identity. How shameful is it today that we live in a time where you can come to a masjid. Not only do you know the identity of the seventh Imam, you can listen to his words, you can learn about his life, and no one shows up. How are we going to face the Prophet on the Day of Judgment? How are we going to face the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? So this is number one, the climate of taqiyya, that there was so much fear. Now why was the Imam so cautious about even revealing his identity? We'll speak about this shortly. Now, one of the most wicked Abbasid Khalifas was Al-Mansur. Al-Mansur is the Abbasid Khalifa. He was the second Abbasid Khalifa. He poisons Imam al-Sadiq. And he ruled with an iron fist. He instilled fear in people. Anyone who opposed him would be executed, thrown into dungeons. Now, in order for you to maintain power, you can't rule with an iron fist. You have to, at least to some degree, gain popular support. So the khulafa that came after Mansur, they realized that, listen, if we're going to hold on to power, we need some support from the people. So what did they do? They decided to restore some of the land that was confiscated from the people. So for example, the Khalifa would declare that any land or any homes that were wrongfully seized, we are returning these properties to their rightful owners. So through this new policy, they gained some support from the masses, because now they're trying to instill this system of adala, that we're trying to, restore justice. Harun al-Rashid, when he came to power, he thought to himself that I have to be very careful about how I deal with Musa al-Kadhim. And he thought to himself that perhaps one way to slow down Imam al-Kadhim's opposition to us, we have this impression, brothers and sisters, that the Imams, they were just in the masjid and they were madloom and they were just reading dua, and that's all that they were doing. If Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam was just doing sujood and he was just hanging around at the mosques, believe me, Harun al-Rashid would have no problem with it. The Imam alayhi salam was leading an underground movement to overthrow the Abbasids. That's why they feared him. So Harun al-Rashid, he thinks to himself that maybe if I give Fadak back to Imam al-Kadhim, perhaps that would slow his opposition to us. Maybe I just need to give him a piece of the pie, so he'll be satisfied, and he got his little sliver of dunya, and he'll leave us alone. So he summons Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. He says to him, Ya Abul Hasan, khudh fadaka. That I heard that the Umayyads, the early khulafa, they confiscated fadak from your grandmother Fatima al-Zahra salawatullahi alayha. So take it back, and then we'll be on good terms. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, La akhudhuha illa bihududiha. I'm paraphrasing. It's as though the Imam says that, I don't think you'll give it back. Harun al-Rashid says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, we've been passing out land to people all year round. It's just a piece of land. We'll give it back to you. It's not a big deal. The Imam says, I'll only take it if you give me the full boundaries of Fadak. Fadak is an orchard, so Harun al-Rashid says, yeah, tell me exactly what part of Medina it is, and I'll restore it to you. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, the eastern boundary is Central Asia. The western boundary is North Africa. The northern boundary is the northern edge of the Islamic Empire. The south is the southern tip of the Islamic Empire. That's Fadak. Meaning what? Fadak is the khilafah that you stole from Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi alayhi. Harun al-Rashid, he says that if we give this to you, then there's nothing left for us. The Imam says that's what Fadak is. You see, brothers and sisters, the Imams alayhimus salam, they were powerful because they spoke truth to power. They were not intimidated by tyrants. The Imam alayhis salam was very vocal when he was in the presence of Harun al-Rashid. When Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam was in Medina, sometimes the Abbasids would send people just to keep tabs on the Imam, just to monitor exactly where he is and report back. Sometimes the agents of the Abbasids, they would not be able to locate Imam Al-Kadhim in Medina. So they start to panic. Where is the Imam? What is he doing? There are reports that he was spotted in Sham. Imagine, the Imam is moving throughout the Islamic Empire silently. He's in Sham. What is he doing in Sham? He's recruiting people for his movement. He's bringing people to the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And when he's in Sham, he tells people that if any of the Abbasid spies, if they ask you, if you have seen me, deny that you even know who I am. That's how dangerous it was to be affiliated with Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. And there were many people who were killed because of their connection to the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam, he also established a system of wikala. You know, brothers and sisters, after the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, do you know how many Shi'as were left? I'm talking about real Shi'as. Not just lovers of Ahlul Bayt. Real followers of Ahlul Bayt. We have a hadith to say there was 3. There were 3 genuine, staunch Shias after the Shahada of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Of course, other than his direct family. Imam Zayn al-Abidin had to rebuild the Ummah. Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq. At the time of Imam al-Sadiq and Imam al-Kadhim, the followers of Ahlul Bayt had multiplied to such an extent that the Imams had to appoint representatives in every corner of the Islamic Empire. You see how quickly the Imams alayhimus salam were able to rebuild the community? They were effective at what they did. Imam al-Kadhim, Imam Zayn al-Abidin used to purchase slaves, train them for a year, and release them. And he would do that year after year after year. Now what were these wakala doing? Many of them were secretly spreading the teachings of Ahlul Bayt throughout the Islamic Empire. People would come to Imam Al-Kadhim, Imam Al-Ridha, and they would say to the Imams that we have questions to ask you, but we live far away from you. And it's too difficult for us to travel to Medina. So what should we do? Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam, for example, says that seek the knowledge of your religion from Zakaria ibn Adam. So some of these wukala were scholars. People would refer to them for religious matters. But in addition to that, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, they would give their zakat and khums to these wukala, and through these networks, they would deliver it to the Imam. So the Imam was receiving all of these funds, and he was funding his oppositional movement against the Khalifa. That's why Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam was imprisoned. He wasn't imprisoned because of salah or because he was reading Quran. He was imprisoned because he was actively fighting against that tyrannical regime. So the Imam alayhi salam is receiving these large amounts of money. He's taking care of orphans. He's supporting these different teachers. He's building this underground movement. And then what happens? One of the Imam's relatives, subhanAllah, sometimes your worst enemies are those who are actually closest to you. One of the relatives of Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam, he goes where? He goes to Harun al-Rashid. He goes to Harun, and Harun was unaware of this network of wukala. Harun didn't know. He thought that Imam Al-Kadhim just believed that he was the Imam. He didn't know that money is flowing to the Imam from every corner of the Islamic empire. So this man, this relative of Imam Al-Kadhim, he says to Harun that it seems that there are two Khalifas. Harun al-Rashid says, what do you mean there are two Khalifas? He says that you receive tax revenue, and there's a man in Medina who's also receiving khiraj. He's also receiving the tax revenue. That's when Harun al-Rashid knew that he had to eliminate Imam Musa al-Kadhim. Brothers and sisters, when we listen to these stories, we listen to how Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam imprisoned, how Harun al-Rashid imprisoned Imam Al-Kadhim, and we say, La'natullahi alayhi, may Allah punish him. But believe me, some of us would sell out the Ahlul Bayt for much less than the kingdom of Harun. Because Harun al-Rashid, if he was alive today, you would think that he's Shia, because of how much he expressed his verbal love for the Ahlul Bayt. If Harun al-Rashid were to walk into our center and someone was reciting poetry about Imam Al-Kadhim, he would probably raise his voice and recite the loudest salawat. He doesn't have a problem praising. But the moment Musa al-Kadhim comes between me and dunya, that's when I have to eliminate Musa al-Kadhim. We all yearn for the dhuhur of the 12th Imam, right? Let me give you a very possible scenario when the Imam reappears. Many of you guys are young. Those who are a bit older, you've been saving up a lot of money. You've been working all your lives, contributing to your 401k, saving for retirement. You have an impressive portfolio. You have stocks. You're trying to secure your financial future, right? Picture this, and believe me, this is very plausible. It's very possible. Say the Imam reappears in the next month. And the country that you're living in says that anyone who supports this Imam, this Mahdi, is going to be considered a terrorist. And if you express any inclination towards him or his movement, we're going to freeze your bank accounts. We're going to freeze your assets. And you're going to be arrested by the cops or the FBI or the CIA. How many of you guys are going to really voice your support for the Imam? It's the same thing. The Abbasids have their agents, and today there are agents today. It's easy to point the finger at Harun al-Rashid and Mansour, but we haven't been tested, brothers and sisters. You know, Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr in his last days, he was speaking to Hawza students, and he said to them that we curse Harun al-Rashid day and night, but has the dunya of Harun al-Rashid ever been offered to you? Some of us, we sell our religion for much less. We compromise our religious values because we don't want to feel awkward. You know, sometimes we'll sit at a table where alcohol is being served. You sold your deen. Why? Because I don't want to, be the oddball. You sold your deen just because you didn't want to be the oddball. You sold it for such a cheap price. Has the dunya of Harun al-Rashid been offered to you? You know, brothers and sisters, Bahlul, who was a student of Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam, who used to pretend to be insane, and through his insanity he used to convey profound wisdom, he enters the court of Harun al-Rashid, and Harun is speaking about his kingdom, and he would look up at the clouds and he would say, Sharriqi aw gharribi, O clouds, go to the east or west, wherever you reign, you will reign in my kingdom. Bahlul, he asks Harun that, O Harun, what would you give for a cup of water if you were dying of thirst? Imagine there was no water and you're about to die of dehydration. How much would you be willing to give for a cup of water? Harun says, I'll give half of my kingdom. If that's what it takes to survive, I'm going to give half of my kingdom. Bahlul says, okay, let's say that you drink the water and then you